Hello, and welcome to CMX's In the Loop podcast. In the Loop is our opportunity to spend time with industry colleagues and friends to talk about their businesses, industry trends, and their use of technology to stay ahead of operational challenges. I'm your host, Jim Hardeman, Chief Marketing Officer here at CMX. And in this episode, we spend time with Tiago Brilhante, QA Director at Restaurant Brands International, the parent company of Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes, and now more recently, Firehouse Subs. Tiago has one of the most interesting backgrounds and stops along the way in his career as you'll ever find. We spend time talking about how RBI's quality team is organized and how they work collaboratively across the brands, product categories, regions, and countries. We also get a behind-the-scenes idea of what it was like to be part of the launch of both the Impossible Whopper and the wildly successful Popeyes Chicken Sandwich in recent years, and how his role and the role of QA in general has changed during the times of COVID. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I think you will too, so thanks for checking us out. Hey, Tiago, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Jim. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
You know, we got to spend some time earlier this summer where you and I co-presented at the North American Food Safety and Quality Assurance Show, and I really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing so many of your great stories and your background. So I'm really excited that you could join us on the podcast, and I think our audience is really going to love hearing more about you and really learning about your interesting background. So yeah, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Chicago was the first time after a really long time that we met and talked to adults. I'm sorry for dumping too many stories maybe on all of you guys, but happy to keep you entertained at the time. It was a great time that we had.
No, we had a great time.
During the conference, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was great. Hey, for our audience, let's just start with an introduction. So maybe, for our audience, tell us who you are, what you do at RBI, and a little bit about maybe your day-to-day role there.
Sure. My name is Tiago. I am the QA director for Restaurant Brands International, who is the owner of Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes, and since yesterday that we signed the deal, the Firehouse Subs.
That's right.
I am based in our Miami office, and I look after all the proteins that we have in the system for all the brands. So that means all the beef for Burger King, all the chicken for Popeyes and Burger King, and the protein solutions, even the plant-based that we have for our products. And on a North America perspective, and I also work as the quality director for Popeyes, and I am the global reference for the brand.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to get into a little bit about how the QA team is organized and how you guys function. But I also learned quite a bit about you earlier this summer about just kind of where you're from and your degree. So would love for you to tell the audience, how does a veterinarian end up in food safety and quality at a brand like RBI? So I would love to have the audience, hear about just your journey and your background and how you got here.
Sure. I am a vet by graduation. So the two things that I immediately listen after saying that is, really? And the second is, so you don't work as a vet? Most of people would associate the profession with the clinical part of that and handling and caring for the animals. I am from Brazil and I went to school there. And part of the vet school program is that we do have in the curriculum some food science and food technology semesters to go through all of that, mostly because of the direct implications that the animal health may have on the proteins and all the concerns about foodborne illnesses coming from there. So it is a part of the job to have veterinarians working, for example, in slaughterhouses and processing facilities for food, just to make sure that they pretty much work as officials for the Ministry of Agriculture, and they help making sure that the things are where they're supposed to. So it is a kind of field for veterinarians, so it's not uncommon if you are from inside and realize that, but I do understand from an external audience that might sound a little bit surprising. I joined the vet school. I think I had like three things in mind. I wanted to work with research. I wanted to have some level of field experience. I didn't want to be on the research and just being the lab rat as I grew up being, because my mom is a microbiologist, so I grew up on a lab. And the third thing is that I wanted to work somewhat related with public health. I think that was a great contribution that the profession can have it. And during middle of the course, a friend of my parents just said that maybe I should give a try and go to some of those plant facilities and see how I felt about it. I really like and start all my internships from end of the course. And then after graduation was just to me a natural choice to work in the food industry. And that was pretty much a little bit more than 20 years ago. So for the last 20 years, I started working in what was a Brazilian middle-sized company that today is just the largest poultry, beef, pork protein producer in the world, called JBS. That was my first job. And then I moved to then the largest in Brazil, and has been now 4 years, and some changes that I joined RBI. Yeah.
Well, I know you made some stops in between there, and I'd love for you to tell some stories just of your experience in the Middle East, and it'd be great to share some of those stories. And I think it's such an interesting background, just kind of the places you've been and the things you've done. So would you mind sharing a story or two there?
No problem at all. My second job, as I mentioned, was this, at the time, the largest food company in Brazil, called Cedia, and had a merger and called that today BRF. After I started as head of the quality department in a facility, then I moved to corporate, started working on the corporate side. And after a couple of years in the company, I was expatriated to the operation in the Middle East. So I was based in Dubai to handle the Middle East operation for almost 7 years, and having all the challenges of not being from the region, not being from the culture, and taking the family there. Was just the wife and me at the time, but moving to a complete, I moved a lot within Brazil, and Brazil on itself has all these cultural challenges, and you are exposed to something that's new, but you can always relate to something, and you can always, in the end of the day, go back to some familiarity. So moving to the Middle East alone was a little bit more challenging than that, like a little bit farther, a little bit harder to get back home, if anything. Just work out. And being 7 years in the Middle East, working for the largest importer of mostly poultry products, by some further processed, just gave me the opportunity to pretty much visit all the countries in the region. BRF, for its brand Sadia, has a great distribution in the region, really strong market share presence on the retail. To markets like Dubai, where I was based, and pretty much similar to what we call like the Western life from a Middle East perspective, but also going on a regular basis to Saudi Arabia, which is a little bit different in terms of experiences, and then going to the places that are not that familiar to our ears. There's not something that you associate with like regular tourism places like Yemen, for example.
Wow. No, that's it's amazing. And then eventually you made your way to RBI, right? You're starting, I believe it was with was it Popeyes in Europe, and then eventually to North America and the move to the United States.
Yeah, after all those years in the Middle East, and again going to these places with some level of security involved, growing a little bit in a place that you sometimes don't necessarily understand what's happening. I had a friend that used to work with me in VRF that was in RBI, and he just mentioned that there was this opening to be the head of, to lead the quality for RBI in the Asia Pacific region out of the office based in Singapore. So in 2017, I then decided to move after 15 years on the same company. I decided to leave the company then with wife and 2 kids that were born abroad, and go to Asia to be based out of Singapore as an RBI, working for the region in Asia Pacific that pretty much goes from Mongolia to New Zealand. So different places. Asia in itself, again, it's super complex, super different. It's not the same. And again, the opportunity to visit even more diverse and even more multicultural cultural event locations was great. It was just great.
So by the time you got to Miami, it was hardly a cultural shock. You'd seen it all and been all over the world by then, right? No big deal.
Strangely enough, going back to so close to a Latino-oriented culture just didn't feel that right as well. Again, that I've been out of Brazil now for more than 10 years. Never quite belonged to. I'm from the south of Brazil, which is not what you typically associate to the Brazil of it. Is not the poster boy of our country. So coming to Miami and finding some Latin bounding was almost as complicated as finding some in Asia or in the Middle East. But has been 3 great years. I just never left the tropics. I was just realizing that I've kind of lived that close to the equator on kind of tropical, beachy, highly touristic places. That sounds great. It's just not my preference.
Yeah.
But life just made me
life is what it is.
And you have to adapt even for.
Yes, no doubt.
And my wife said, like, for someone who doesn't like heat, I don't like the heat. I don't like the beach. I'm not bothered by the ocean. And my wife said, like, for someone who doesn't like all those things, you've been making some really interesting life choices.
Interesting choice. Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, such an interesting background. I'd love to talk a little bit more about RBI. Obviously, a multi-brand company, huge scale, doing business in lots of countries. Can you talk a little bit about just how the QA team is organized? I know you have some cross-functional or cross-brand responsibilities, but would love to just kind of understand or talk to the audience about the scale and just how you guys are organized and work as a quality assurance team across the brands.
Sure. The QA structure it's kind of on its own. We are inside the supply chain structure, but we have our own VP, and the team reports to our global VP. It's kind of split on what we call the North America part of that. The home countries being so relevant to the brands, US for Popeyes and Burger King, and Canada for Tim Hortons, gives a sense of scale. So we kind of split the business into the international part of it and North America. The international then split on the 3 different regions: Latin America, Europe and Middle East, and Asia Pacific. I work under this split for North America, so we have teams looking after both US and Canada markets in the different brands. The direct reports to our VP, it's 4 different directors, one taking care of each one of the brands. And I do take care of Popeyes as a brand, and we have another director that helps us all the coordination with the services associated to keeping something that large in scale operating. And then the team itself works as category managers. So we split ourselves into, as experts to the subjects, we work within the categories. This is where I am responsible for all the proteins for all the 3 brands in United States and Canada. And I have my other QA colleagues looking after the bakery category, the beverages category that's so relevant to Tim Hortons, for example, desserts, seasonings, fats and oils, condiments, you name it. The restaurants that operate under Restaurant Brands International just gives us the opportunity to be as diverse as serving breakfast options to desserts to your dinner time. So it's a great team that works pretty well together and works the same way. So despite this geographical split on North America and the rest of the world, we do work as one integrated team that operates using the same tools, under the same logics, trying to implement and assist on the same policies for all the brands anywhere in the world. So
excellent.
I think that's how we kind of split our stuff.
Yeah, so the shared services approach across the various brands with individual responsibilities or subject matter expertise is largely. Can you talk a little bit about maybe, what's the volume of suppliers and products that the team is managing?
From a North America perspective, I can have access to all the information globally, but our day-to-day here being North America oriented, we do have something around 2,000 different products approved. So we do approve every single item that is present in the restaurants, all the food and packaging items. We have within the quality team, the global quality team, there's a food safety part that helps us pushing the approvals for like all the chemicals that we have to clean the restaurants. But on the food and packaging only, we are saying here something around 2,000 different commodities that we operate, making sure that we understand what is the specification requirements with that, who are the suppliers behind, what level of controls we have, both in terms of processes and quality related to the product as a finished good that we offer to our guests in the restaurant. That translates talking to something around 800 different suppliers here in North America, that we do have different frequencies of interaction, but quite frequent interactions nevertheless. There are suppliers that we do have weekly testings of the products, but there are suppliers that we may not look as intensively. But that's all coordinated, again, part of this global scheme that we operate. We pretty much define that based on the risks associated to the products, to the relevance to the brand, to the history that we have behind. So we take all those things into account, and we have that approach of understanding what we think that is and trying to set some level of controls that would be giving us the reassurance that things are as close as possible as they're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, and obviously you mentioned that you're all standardized and trying to use the same tool, and we are on the CMX podcast here. So would love for just a little bit more detail around how you guys use the CMX application. I know that you're doing it from everything from supplier relationship management to product lifecycle management, all the way through incidents and product tracking. So maybe just talk a little bit about how you use the software, why you use the software, and kind of what is the end result or the benefits? What does it give you guys as a brand to be able to operate your business at scale?
Sure. I think why we use it is the easiest is pretty much to keep us as close to mentally sane as possible, because things at that scale, you can only imagine how complex they might get. And again, we're talking to the team. Even without going to global, we're talking on a team here in North America that has different backgrounds, different native languages. We have Portuguese speakers, we have Spanish speakers, we have Hindi speakers, and we try to kind of give ourselves the same understanding of everything by having a tool that pretty much helps us keep things as simple as possible to manage something as complex. So we do work with a CMX solution that has been customized to us to manage everything related to our QA existence, in a sense. So when we're talking about our corporate suppliers, as we call the entities that we have legal relationship with, it's there embedded in the same system, all the legal documents, all the agreements, all the certifications that we might be looking for, and sustainability is growing importance on that. But the system begins with our high-level corporate legal relationship with every supplier. Then each of those legal entities do have manufacturing sites. Then we also use the system to say, hey, we have audited the supplier, this is the results, those are the corrective actions, and then we keep track and history of all this relationship, and we start doing the thing that I think we like the most here, that is collecting data. And the PAC system that we have, that we used, provided by CMX, does provide us, then enable us to gather all this data and have all this analysis, because we also use that then to have this integration of what is the specification that we want to have, and how then the performance of each one of those suppliers in terms of testings, in terms of corrections, in terms of, as you mentioned, like performance in the restaurant, like incidents, everything then integrated within the same system. Very friendly buttons that make us find the relationship between all these different components in the same place. We don't need to open any different system to find my audit or my specification, or to find the name of the QA manager or the email on that particular site. The system brings everything together in one place, has one place to visit, but again, it's one place that we then start putting all the information, our lab and all the results associated to that, upload all the results and give us this really nice opportunity to look at data as a consolidated information at the same place.
Yeah.
So SPEC is a great help to let people know what we expect and make sure that we are following our own expectations on that.
Yeah, and then that all rolls into vendor scorecards and, like you said, the performance management, whether it's the performance of particular products or performance of particular suppliers or even region against region. You mentioned being very data driven. It really has enabled you to have like that, like you said, at your fingertips, having the access to the information and certainly making decisions based on data.
No doubts. We dissect the data the way that we look. If you want to look for a certain period of time in the food business, sometimes seasonality plays a role that if you're just tracking on the day-to-day, we may not realize how it is, but the system also gives us this opportunity to kind of zoom out and look things for a longer period of time perspective that can help us identify patterns. As you mentioned, I can just say, I want to go for this particular region, for this particular country, for this particular supplier. My joke is if I want to see just suppliers starting with letter A, the system allows me to do that. So,
yes.
And in the end of the day, the complexity of the information, the level, the scale of things that we try to handle here, the system is this big enabler that puts the pressure on us then to be capable of actually extracting some piece of information from all this data that we are collecting. And that is, in the end of the day, probably the biggest challenge. Like, how do you have so much and make your own decision about it?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for a lot of brands out there that maybe have information overload, but just not the insights needed to make decisions and see those patterns. So having all of that in one system gives you that visibility for sure. That's really good. I know you've been involved in oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's just because you mentioned before the scorecard, and forgot to mention what we do then, which is very, to my experience, kind of unique the way the RBI does. We have so many different informations. We kind of consolidated them all in one indicator that tells what is the status of each one of my suppliers at any given time, that we call scorecard, but it's actually composed of. This year was an easy year because we had only 8 different components. We are moving for something a little bit more simpler of 14 different components for 2022. So CMX is helping us keeping the system alive, keep the system always challenging us to look at things differently. And in that sense, it never stops growing, never stops, again, as more complex as it may become because we're adding more things. The underlining, the reason behind it is try to add some simplicity to the smallest way of looking at things. So the scorecard is this one end of everything result that give us this, and again, I can look at a supplier level, I can look at a commodity level, at a category level, at a brand level, and a region level, and a global level. We always are capable of giving, numerically speaking, very objectively, one answer. How's your quality? I can say this was here, it's there. So being data-driven, that's, of course, the main KPI of the global targets that we and the team that we share. But in the end of the day, the system does allow that. For better or for worse, is the one thing. It's the one screen that's always opened on my desktop. It's the one thing that I'm always looking at, and sometimes scratching the head, saying, "I just don't know now." But it's there for us to take it and
to figure it out,
and manage. So.
Very good. Yeah. Maybe switch gears a little bit. I know you've been involved in some really interesting product launches over the last couple of years. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about just your involvement with the Impossible Whopper and maybe the chicken sandwich launched by Popeyes a couple of years ago? There's a lot of notoriety and press around those, but I know you and supply chain behind the scenes and quality, there's a lot of effort that goes into that to launch, and then obviously scrambling as you scale up with kind of the surprise demand around the chicken sandwich. So would love you to tell some stories around those 2 product launches.
Yeah. Timing and of the perspective may or may not have been my best friend moving to North America. I have just moved from launching the new Whopper in Asia and all the challenges associated with developing the suppliers of the flagship product that was then changing a little bit in terms of dimensions and performing technologies. And when I thought, okay, nothing can get more complex than just pushing our flagship product, I was invited to join the North America team. And within maybe 30 minutes in the job, I was told that we were just about to launch the Impossible Whopper.
Yeah.
We literally announced the day before and then came to the QA team saying, what do we do next? Because all those conversations about the spec system and developments and keeping things in one place so quality can look at it doesn't mean that quality and works isolated from the rest of the company. We still exist to support all the innovation pipeline, the legal teams, the brand activation. So everything that we do is highly integrated with the expectations of the company, and we support all those initiatives. So when I got here, probably the third thing that I've heard after welcome and how are you is we have Impossible now to look at from the supplier perspective. Was great because I was the very first supplier that I visited after I moved to US. It's interesting because it does, from a manufacturing perspective, looks the same if you think from a burger patty, but everything behind the process is so interesting. It's so unique that makes you want to learn more and do that. It was a great success in 2019 when I came here, and that went well. And when you thought things were good and stable, Popeyes start having really, really strong results on the market test that was going on with something that was the first time in US for a chicken sandwich that you may or may not heard about in 2019.
Of course, yes.
Everything that we've thought about knowing in terms of chicken and supply and anticipating volumes and developing suppliers that would support what the promotion would need, just prove ourselves really, really wrong and put ourselves a challenge of maybe instead of looking for the number of suppliers that we have within this very short period of time, let's move from the number of suppliers that we have for something that was literally 5 times larger. So there was
a lot of
phase of
crazy demand
in the company. A lot of crazy demand, an amazing job that our culinary team done, developing the right product, approaching the right suppliers, and just putting us out there to finalize all those testings, to finalize all those endorsements, and make sure that in the end of the day, we would still have the high quality product that the brand was creating all the buzz about, and then in the volumes that will not put us in the news again for that reason. So that within 6 months here in the job was pretty much 2 kind of milestones that I'm super proud to be part of. As challenging as they were very rewarding, and still something looking back that you can say we did that. And if you gives you this perspective that if you've done that, you pretty much are bold enough not to try to do something else, which is a great thing to do. The company being that bold company that believes that can actually go and do it. So it's a great place to be and keeps you busy.
Yeah, well, it's RBI, the whole team over there across the brands are so respected from just a marketing perspective and innovation, and certainly keeps the quality team on their toes and having to move quickly and do a good job because there's so much innovation that's in your pipeline, and it's really, really interesting to watch from afar, being a partner for sure. I was curious, obviously
it's fun to watch from the inside as well. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Over the last 2 years, and certainly just in the last couple of months, it's been supply chain. There's just been so many challenges with, just through COVID, and I know just kind of finding substitutions and changing shelf life on products and just trying to keep the core menu items going. As we come to kind of the close of 2021, what is 2022 looking like for you? Do you have any really interesting projects that you're working on? Kind of what are you excited about going into 2022 as it pertains to your role in RBI?
I think the greatest learning for us, like 2020, is that QA has always been quite stable on the things. We've always been quite sure about the things that we always believed, and putting so many constraints that were just applicable for everyone. So it was not the natural. I don't know why this person or function is trying to say that. Everything kind of moved us and shook us a little bit, made us realize that there are other ways of trying to do things and still get the results that you're expecting. And I think that it's, and again, not necessarily something that is that commonly associated to QA. I think we did this great job of changing a little bit our mindset and our expectations to go after those solutions that force us to think differently, to act differently, without losing sight of the end result and all the things that we wanted to be, with the sense of urgency that the business and the challenges were coming. So that was pretty much the learnings of the last 2 years. The 2022 hopefully will be a little bit of consolidation of that. We are now maturing a little bit more, all those new learnings, all those new talks. We are definitely exploring different venues in terms of how virtual world is actually there to help us, interacting with the others, interacting with suppliers, interacting with the product, interacting with the processes. We always rely so much into the obvious close relationship that you have, and now we're just not necessarily being given that opportunity anymore. So 2022 for sure is going to give us a little bit of hopefully opportunity to leave those thinking a little bit more and mature those ideas. And in terms of for RBI, again, it has been a month that we announced the business with Firehouse Subs. Yesterday, we finally signed the deal and closed. So there's all this buzz of, as much as we will not touch things that are working and we're not going to jump in with the heads down on that just because we're going to give the opportunity, but you always have that buzz coming of the anxiety of something new, new team members to come and share their learnings with a brand that grew so nicely on their own, and how we can integrate to make things better. So a lot of my expectations for 2022 goes a little bit of that. And proteins is this category that's always going to be core to our brands. It's always going to be so relevant to the brand. I mean, Popeyes has just now moved from new nuggets that you want to do, and you may explore different versions of that. It's always going to be those ideas that you are so proud to be part of. But what I'm expecting is to be given the opportunity to just consolidate a little bit more of that. The pace is not going to go down for sure. The demand will continue to increase, and hopefully we're just going to be here to have all of these. The system is there to. It is set in a sense that grows with us. The nice part of the system as well is that it's not kind of chunked to what it is. It does give us the opportunity to utilize it as it grows, and we are growing. By all means, we just might need to create 7-digit references to our products because we are just growing the family on that sense. But it hopefully it's going to be a great year, as all things considered. We have, again, all the learnings that we had opportunity to absorb in this couple of years was great. I have always been the only one member of the QA team. One thing that I forgot to mention, all the QA team was already working remotely. For most, I was based in our office in Miami, along with VP, but the rest of the team were already based, some people in Toronto, but a lot of the team actually has been home-based way before the pandemic. So we kind of had already that dynamics of conversations and decisions. I just learned that I could use more pajamas than not and all this, but we have all those new learnings even on that. I said the first call after the pandemic was trying to share the experiences of working from home and what people would say. And one of our directors, who has been home-based for many years now, said, I just wake up and I start my day by like changing, moving away from the room. And I remember on the first Tuesday in the pandemic, being laid on my bed, still in my pajamas, laptop on my belly, saying, oh, that's going to be different. But
yes,
we learn.
Yeah, no, just it's been an adjustment for all of us to work from home and work virtually, and and build routine back into our lives. But I think it's also just given us a lot of our opportunity with tools for video conferencing and to do a lot more virtually and to connect more with people without having to get on an airplane. And we don't always have that opportunity to see people face to face, but I think so much of our lives have been able to get us, to see each other virtually. And it's, I've heard lots of stories about being able to connect more deeply with your suppliers and just being able to connect with people, much more easily through these new tools. So thankfully you've got the foundation in place with CMX and the team has been working remotely. So I expect 2022 to be a great year for you guys.
Thank you. That's the idea. A lot of the team members, though, are just now listening their voices for the first time. And it's always this bad experience when you do that, saying, do I really sound like that? But you learn how to live even with that. You learn to live with your virtual yourself and your virtual voices out there. So now you can listen what the others listen. Yes.
Well, you're going to get an ability to hear yourself on the podcast once we finish production on this and put you out there. So I do thank you for joining us. It's been really great catching up, and I think the audience is really going to enjoy hearing your background and learning more about RBI, and certainly really exciting news around Firehouse Subs. And we'll all be very interested to see how that looks once the brand is integrated with RBI, and we expect great things from you guys. So thanks so much, Tiago, and appreciate your time today.
Again, thanks for having me. Let's catch up maybe on not a podcast, but
I need to come down and see you in Orlando.
Somewhere, not a bad
great.
place. Not a bad place at all.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thanks so much. Yeah, talk to you later.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this podcast episode of In the Loop with CMX. If you like what we're doing, then please do leave us a review and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube or podcast channels. That way you'll be notified automatically about each new episode as we produce them. You can also be part of our podcast as a guest. Get in touch through our website where you can also learn more about us, our clients, and the CMX1 EQMS platform. Just go to www.cmx1.com. Thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you next time.